Alright guys, so now we're going to get to use all that SohCahToa nonsense to try to figure out how to solve for a missing side of a triangle. Alright, so an ideal question might look something like this. Now, you have to see the right angle because this only works on a right triangle. And then what you would most likely see is another labeled angle. So I'm going to put 35 degrees down there, and they have to give you one other piece of information. So let's pretend that they have given us the hypotenuse is 5 and they're asking for this. So what we're going to do with every single problem is I always want you to focus in on the angle, and before we even do anything else, it's like, okay, circle the angle, and your first step should be to label opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Okay, so if I go across the picture, that's the opposite. Across from the 90 is the hypotenuse, and the one next to the 35 is the adjacent. Okay, now these are the three things that I have labeled, and I'm going to go ahead and write up my memory trick for SohCahToa, or if you know how to spell it, that's great. Some old hippie caught another hippie. Okay, so that's what we have, and with SohCahToa, you look at your information from the picture, right? So here's the idea. The adjacent has nothing labeled on it, right? Like there's no number, there's no letter, so you don't really need the adjacent. You need to focus on the two that have a label. So which one of these involves the opposite and the hypotenuse? Well, that would be this part. So when we go to set it up, we write the word sine, and behind that you need to have an angle, guys. So what is our angle? Well, it's the one that we've circled, and then it equals the O over the H. So O over H. Okay, cool. So we're going to solve this, and the idea is to get X by itself. So this is actually not too hard, because all you have to do, guys, is multiply by 5 to move it to the other side. So to get X alone, you're just going to do 5 times the sine of 35, and that's going to equal, that's X. That is your answer. Now for typing it in, you can type it into the calculator exactly like this. Just make sure that if you go to your mode button that you are in degrees. You better be in degrees, or you're going to get a really sketchy answer that's going to confuse you. And that should be it. Type that in, and whammo, you will have your answer. Okay, so what if it is more difficult? And honestly, it's not much more difficult. There's only one other kind of problem I can think of that's kind of poopy, okay? And this is what I'm thinking. Let's see. Whee! Maybe this is a 12, and this is the X, and this is like a 6. Okay, so let's pretend that this is what you've been given, and it wants you to find X. Okay, so we start the same. SohCahToa. Let's circle the angle. Okay, the only angle besides 90 is the 12. And now I'm going to label my stuff. So across the picture is the opposite. Over here is the hypotenuse, and next to it is the adjacent. Okay, which of these three do we not really need? Well, we don't really need to label this because nothing is there. But I need to keep the opposite, and I need to keep the adjacent because that has a label on it. So opposite and adjacent, opposite, adjacent, opposite, adjacent, right here. Toa. So that would mean that we need to use the tangent. So I'm going to write TAN, which is the short for tangent, and behind it goes the angle. Okay, the angle was 12 equals opposite over adjacent. Now, this is different from the last one. I hope you notice it. Maybe you don't. It's different because now the X is in the denominator, and when X is in the denominator, it's a little trickier to solve for X. There's so many different ways to do this. Some of you might want to use cross multiply, where you put that over 1 and then you cross multiply. I like using a reciprocal because for me that makes sense. If I want, I look at this and I think, man, I wish the X was on the top. So guess what? I make X be on top. So basically, I just flip these two. Now, the only thing is whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. That's something you've learned a long time ago. So if I flipped this side, or if I did the reciprocal of this side, I have to do the reciprocal of this side. So right now, this is just a tangent 12. It's almost like it's over 1. I can just flip that. this is how I like to do these problems because now it looks like the one that we had above. So all I have to do to get x by itself is multiply both sides by 6. So if I multiply the 6 over here, it's going to look something like this. And if you have a calculator, you're just typing that in, just like you see it. And whatever that is going to be your answer. So not too bad. Hopefully this helps you with solving for the side of a missing, I'm a liar, solving for the missing side of a right triangle using SohCahToa. Good luck.